Good evening. I'm George Millar, and with me in the studio are Lorne Westnedge and Greg DeVries. We're going to be talking about a cross-country bike ride. Lorne, there were others with you on the trip. Who would they be?
Well, there was the DeVries family, Greg being the youngest, his father Ed, and his older brothers John and Doug. I want to also mention part of the team being Karen DeVries, who didn't actually ride, but she drove the motorhome that escorted us and also served as our cook, and an excellent cook she was. Aside from the DeVries family, there was also a young Nelson man by the name of Brian Hernandez, and a young fellow with us, Alistair Fraser, also a high school student. He lives in Pennsylvania, although they have a summer home here in the area.
Mm-hmm. How did the planning for this get started?
Well, it was really Ed DeVries' idea. We've done a number of bicycle trips in the past, much shorter, 8 or 9 days on average. And Ed had thought that he wanted to ride across the States with his family. He kind of had a certain time frame in mind. First of all, Greg had to be old enough. And Greg, you were what, 13 last summer?
Yep.
The other two sons are both in university, and Ed felt that it was there wasn't very much time before they'd be tied up with other projects or whatever else might happen to young adults. And there was also the time factor with Ed, that how old can one be to take on a project like this? Not that Ed is of that age. We've met folks in the past that were well into their 60s, and taking on projects like this. We had a time frame, of course, that we had to stick to. That was mostly set by myself. Having a job, I was very fortunate to be able to get 6 weeks off. I managed to save up part of my 1986 holidays and my 1987 holidays and put them together to get 6 weeks in the summertime.
Okay, and so you were across the states from west to east?
From west to east. We started off at Newport Beach, Oregon, and we ended up at Bowers Beach, Delaware.
Now, does that take you on a specific cross-country route, or did you use more than one major run?
Well, we did our best to stay off the major routes. It was a tour of the back roads of America. We started off on route number 20, and I don't remember what all the highways were that we passed through. We stayed out of most major towns. The biggest city we went through on the bikes was Omaha, Nebraska, and Washington, D.C.
Mm-hmm. Now, again, in terms of planning, what were laid on by way of supplies and equipment?
Well, as far as bike trips go, we did kind of have it easy. We had a motorhome that went with us. As I mentioned earlier, Karen DeVries drove that. And while we didn't sleep in it, we had tents and so on, but the motorhome carried all our gear, so we didn't have to pack it all with us. And in the mornings when we woke up, and if it had been raining overnight and we were good and wet, we didn't have to pack up wet sleeping bags and put them on our bikes and ride. We were able to throw them into the motorhome. Karen, on a couple of occasions, took them to a laundromat and threw them in a dryer for us.
Mm-hmm. What would you target for as an average number of miles per day before you started out?
Well, as we started the trip, we had a plan, and we figured that it should be 80 miles for the first week per day, and then we wanted to bump that up to 100, and we pretty well did that. We found that the 80 didn't usually work. It was usually 85 or 88 in the first week because of where the towns were. And there were some days when we didn't ever make 100 in the latter parts of the trip too. Our biggest day was 120 miles.
Mm-hmm. Going back to the pre-trip again for a moment, was there any training routine that people undertook to get into shape, other than perhaps just biking?
Well, for me, that's more or less what it was. I did take up cross-country skiing last winter to try and stay in reasonable shape, particularly for my legs. And I rode 1,000 miles before we left on the trip. Mm-hmm. The DeVries family are pretty well all athletes. They play basketball a lot. Greg, did you have anything special that you looked after or you took care of before you left?
Well, not really, I guess. We rode a lot up to Castlegar and then over to Salmo. But other than that, there wasn't much other things that I worked on.
How many times a week or a month would you do that getting ready?
Oh, once a month maybe.
Once a month, eh?
So maybe twice.
Going along the trip, what were some of the more interesting and also some of the more hazardous situations you got into?
Oh, that's difficult to say, really, because there was so much. It was so different going across the entire country. In Oregon, of course, we had the mountains, and they were very pleasant. You get psyched up for mountains when you can see them on the map, and you say, okay, we have to go over 2 passes this morning. One of them is a mile high, and you get to the top, and you get your picture taken at the summit sign that says elevation 5,277 feet, Dixie Pass. And there's the group of us. In fact, I have that picture here if I can show you.
Surely.
And as I say, you get psyched up for things like that, and you're ready for them. Then you get into other areas when you can't get psyched up for whatever might be coming. Have you got that one there, Greg?
Right here.
Dixie Pass?
Yep.
Oh, yes. And that was the highest point on your trip, wasn't it?
No, not at all. No,
elevation-wise?
That was in Oregon.
Okay.
That was the first time we went up to a mile. But we went over one in Wyoming, Togedy Pass, and I know I can put my hands on that one very quickly. And that was 9,600 feet. There it is there.
And you don't even look tired.
Well, that wasn't true. That was about an 18-mile climb. And it took us till about 1:30 in the afternoon to get to that point. That was the day we rode 120 miles because, of course, from the Continental Divide, it's supposed to be downhill all the way to the Mississippi River, and that's not quite true, is it, Greg?
No.
But we certainly did have a good downhill ride after that summit.
So that would be some of the interesting things. Hazards. Greg, I understand you were involved in something that was a hazard.
Well, yeah. When I hit my dad's back tire, as my dad rode off, I fell off to the left and skidded on the road, kind of.
And what part of the trip would that be?
That was in the latter part of Wyoming.
Oh, yes. Road burn, I think they call it.
Yeah, road rash.
Uh-huh.
I got a big black eye and swelled up really bad on my left eye. Covered my eye for a couple days, and I missed biking for the 2 afternoons after that.
You mentioned taking back roads and so on. How did you find car and truck drivers in terms of courtesy?
Car drivers are generally pretty good. It depended on the roads, of course. Cyclists have a duty to be courteous as well and to stay to the right as much as possible and not create a hazard in themselves. We did find some truck drivers that were a little less than friendly. For the most part, that was on some fairly narrow roads where there weren't shoulders, and we were more or less forced to ride on the traveled portion of the road. If it's a narrow road, the truck driver has no option than to go around you, and if there's a car coming, that means he's got to slow down. A few of them didn't like to do that very well, and they leaned on the horn pretty good, and we found usually if they leaned on the horn twice, we got into the gravel.
You mentioned something about cities and avoiding them, but I guess you had a few experiences of, what was it, getting separated and needing help or something?
In the West, that wasn't really a problem. If you look at the maps, when you're going through Idaho and Wyoming and Nebraska, towns are rather few and far between. So we would make a plan in the morning and say, well, Karen, we'll meet you here for lunch, and that would be 50 or 55 miles down the road. And when we get there for lunch, we then say, well, today is very windy, so we're going to shorten up on our afternoon and only go 35 miles or 40 miles, or we're doing very well. Let's go for another 55 miles, make it a 110-mile day, whatever the situation might be. That worked very well. Until we got into further east, into Pennsylvania particularly, we ran into problems. There was one night where at lunchtime we'd said, well, we'll meet you either in West Brownsville or Brownsville. It turned out that these towns were just across a river from each other, but the bridge was out. So the only way to get from West Brownsville back to Brownsville was to climb a fairly significant hill, get back on the freeway, cross the main bridge on the freeway, and get into Brownsville. We did get separated that night, and I wound up sitting there on my own at this junction, not knowing whether I should continue on realizing no one was in West Brownsville, but having no idea where they would be in Brownsville either. I sat there until it was almost dark, and then the friendly motorhome pulled into view again, and I was very relieved. We did find a town park. Most of these towns, no matter how small they were, would have a city park of some sort, and they were very friendly in the cities towards cyclists. We had no problems at all camping there for the night.
Tended to use that as a rendezvous site then, did you?
Where possible, yes. We also got some help one evening from the city police, and this was in Maryland. We were all more or less in the same town, but we were on different roads. A number of things had happened that day. One of the riders had gotten a flat tire that he wasn't able to fix. So he hitchhiked in, got a ride in the back of a pickup truck. The fellow carried him on where he thought everybody else would be, and he couldn't find anybody else. So the fellow then dropped him off at the police station, figuring that would be a good point to rendezvous. The police officers assisted us greatly because they went out and then found the motorhome. Karen that day was lost totally, and was sitting at the side of the road, not on the route that we had agreed we'd be on, but she'd gotten waylaid at some point, and the police officers found her, brought her back to this town, Cumberland. Ed and I, by chance, met up with the fellow that had brought Alistair in the back of the truck, and he told us what he had done with Alistair. He's at the police station. So Ed and I headed for the police station. By the time we got there, the motorhome was already there. And the policemen were very helpful. They suggested that we not take this particular road because there's no shoulder, and we not take this particular road because of the truck traffic on it and the hills. And they suggested, in fact, that we should camp in Cumberland that night. We thought that would be a good idea because by this time we were getting pretty hungry. It was supper time. But there were 4 other riders out there that we hadn't accounted for yet. And the police officer said, well, where will they be? Well, they're supposed to be on Highway 25, which led into West Virginia. And the officers scratched their head for a minute and said, well, we're really not supposed to cross the state line, but we'll get them. Sure enough, they brought him back, and we rendezvoused and camped in Cumberland. The police gave us the idea that we should actually ride on what is called the C&O Canal towpath. The Chesapeake and Ohio Canal was started in the early 1800s. And it was never finished. It never got to Ohio. It only got as far as Cumberland. The company that was building it went bankrupt. And it was to bring barges up inland. There was a path beside the canal, which was for the mules who towed the barges. It's in good shape, but it's not paved. We started out on this canal the next day. The nice thing about it, of course, was that it was flat. And we didn't have to worry about hills, and that was a real relief. Because we found that the Appalachians, while not being very high, were very steep mountains, and we were getting tired out from them. But this was only the second day of the time we rode. When we actually rode in the rain was on this path. When an unpaved path gets wet, it gets very muddy. I've got a shot here also of that. Perhaps you can get, and you can just see the mud on the backs of the riders along the path.
Yes.
There is a towpath on a dry day also.
Yes, you can see it there better. On the next day, we were back on it, heading into Washington, D.C. And it was quite a tourist attraction, this path, particularly around the urban centers. And they've got an old-fashioned canal boat there, and lots of people, whether they were cyclists, horseback riders, joggers. Everybody was out there that morning.
That leads us to the next question. Did you schedule time, or did you take time to play tourist at many spots along the way?
Not very much. It took us 36 days to ride across the country. And we've calculated that we actually rode 31 and a half days. We had 1 day off in Grand Teton National Park in Wyoming. There's some beautiful scenery there, and we can show you a great mountainside shot that I took in Grand Teton.
Several.
There were several of them, but there's one in particular that I'm especially fond of.
Oh, yes.
Yes, that's very nice.
So we had 1 day there for rest. That was after 10 days riding. The next 2 half days that we took off were more or less unscheduled. It was because of the weather conditions, the high winds that just kind of slowed us down and tired us out one morning. And the other half day was in Omaha, Nebraska, and that was a day after we'd had 3 inches of rain fall on us at night. As I said earlier, we only rode in the rain for 2 days, but we got rained on quite a bit at night. And this one night in Wahoo, Nebraska, outside of Omaha, we got over 3 inches of rain on us. We were very wet. We did have 2.5 days off in Indiana. The DeVries family have relatives there, so we stopped to visit with them. Had a nice time. I actually got to sleep in a bed there, which was the only time in the 6 weeks that happened. Had a good break and a good visit.
You mentioned that the police were very helpful. Did you find people generally friendly and helpful across the country, or would you label one area perhaps better than some others? Or?
I don't know that I'd say it was better. It seemed that we were riding on a route that not many cyclists rode along. I mean, it's not that uncommon for people to ride across the states, and we met quite a few cross-country cyclists, particularly in Oregon and Idaho. But once we got out of the Grand Tetons, we didn't see any more. With one exception, in Ohio, we did run into a couple. But we were riding through, as I said, the back roads of America, and people hadn't seen cross-country cyclists. They looked at us with our brightly colored, funny-looking shorts and wondered who these strange people were, and very often they'd stop and chat. They find out that we're from Canada, we'd ridden all the way from the Pacific Ocean, and in many cases they were amazed. Very, very friendly. People would say, "Oh, gosh, you folks, you must be hungry. Could you use a bag of tomatoes?" Or whatever. And we were treated very well by the citizens.
You mentioned one flat tire. Did you have much by way of maintenance problems across the country?
Well, it depends who you talk to. Greg, did you have anything other than a flat tire?
Not other than the flat tire. I had about 3 flat tires in the whole day. I mean, the whole trip.
I don't know how many flats I had. I had a lot. Probably a dozen, maybe 16. But they're all in the first 3 states. Wyoming was the state that everybody seemed to have trouble with tires, and I really don't know why. The roads were good. But after Wyoming, I went all the way to the Atlantic Ocean through 10 states without a flat tire. And that was the only problem I really had. I did have to replace the chain on my bicycle when I returned home, and it was making a bit of a grinding noise, and it had stretched a little bit, but managed to get me through. Some of the fellows had broken spoke problems. We had to replace one rear gear cluster, didn't we, on Alistair's bike?
Alistair's bike. On a day off in Wyoming, a guy was riding along and just fell off.
Yes. But beyond that, I don't think there was any. Your accident didn't cause any problems at all on your bike, did it?
No, not at all.
Yeah, that was fortunate. Speaking of the bikes, you were all on 10 speeds?
10-speed styles. Now, my bike has 18 speeds. And I found that very helpful, particularly, as I said, in those steep Appalachians. You get that low gear. Greg, yours is a 12-speed?
No, 10-speed.
Greg's is a 10-speed. So they range from 10 up to 18. Some 12, some 15s.
What would be the approximate cost of an excursion of this sort?
Well, we were going as a family group and cutting corners as much as we could. Karen did most of the cooking. I think we ate out approximately once a week. And usually when we ate out, it was an all-you-could-eat smorgasbord place. And we found a couple of those that were just excellent deals. $3.95 for all you can eat. And you'd see 7 hungry cyclists come in and they'd just shudder. But we managed to put the food away very well. I believe we budgeted approximately $600 US for everyone, each. And that covered everything, including the gas for the motorhome, campsite fees, the food that we ate. Naturally, if we went out to do anything that cost extra, we were on our own.
Now, if somebody were sitting in their living room listening to you describe this and they said, hey, that would be interesting, what would you suggest to somebody who would want to get into this? Do they start with a major trip like this, or do they start with something smaller and build up?
Well, I guess that depends on the individual to a certain degree. First of all, they want to have a reliable bicycle. something that's not going to let them down or cause them grief. And I would think they would likely want to take a couple of shorter trips just to see how they do. Decide whether or not they're going to pack all their own gear or whether they're going to find somebody to drive and be their cook. I have to give all the credit there to Karen, because that's a tough job. It wasn't much of a holiday for her, being responsible for these fellows with their big appetites and going out every morning and finding another campsite or a spot to have lunch and so on, and doing the shopping and everything. But if you're willing to pack it yourself, you can avoid some of that, but then you've got all the extra weight on your bicycle. Mm-hmm. I would encourage anybody to do it, but I would think you'd want to start a little smaller than what we did this time. Start with a weekend trip and then work up to a week, and then try yourself across the country, see how you do.
How did your group get into it? What kinds of biking experience did people bring to this trip?
Again, Ed is the one that has the most experience. He's had bike tours for more than 10 years, even before he moved to Nelson. I know you've been in Nelson for over 10 years now. He had a trip. Ed got me involved in 1980. We went out on a spring day. He said, "You've got a bike in the basement, let's go for a ride." And as I recall, that day we rode 23 miles and I nearly died. But we started to build up from there, and we took our first 6-day trip that same year. It was from Radium Hot Springs up to Jasper. We subsequently have taken a couple other trips, and then we were sponsored by the Evangelical Covenant Church as part of their camping program to sponsor a bike camp, or to run a bike camp. Mm-hmm. So we've been involved in that for several years. Mm-hmm. As I said earlier, it was Ed's idea that he wanted at some point to ride across the United States, and this was the year to do that. So the bike camp for the church was put on hold for 1 year. We hope to get back into that again next summer.
Mm-hmm. Greg is the youngest member of the group. Were there any special problems or special advantages that fell to you as the group traveled?
Well, when I had the accident, I got to sleep in the motorhome. Nice bed. And other than that, not really, I guess. I got more of a draft from behind these big guys. Easier pedaling, but not much.
The trip depended in part on you being old enough to be ready for it. Would you have wanted to try it any younger?
No. It was hard enough as it was. Mm-hmm. At times, well, actually, the one day, we only rode half a day, and that was in Dunning, Nebraska. We all wanted to just head home. It was so hard. Just drive the rest of the way to Washington and drive back, but we stuck it to it.
Mm-hmm. If you were asked by somebody about bike tripping, how would you tell them to prepare for something like this?
Well, I guess I'm kind of lucky because I'm in a athletic family. But if you're not that athletic, you really have to practice a lot because it was really hard.
Mm-hmm. Where would you like to do another one?
Where? Oh, I have no idea. I guess I'd kind of like to do it again when I'm older, but not for a couple of years.
How about across Canada?
Too mountainous.
Too mountainous, eh?
I'd love to do that. The problem is, of course, Canada is significantly wider than the United States, so
yes.
You'd have to budget that much more time.
Would that be the only significant thing that you'd see?
I've never been across Canada. I really don't know. I think we saw just about everything in the States. I don't think we'd see that much different. Mm-hmm. The mountains would be slightly different. The prairies might be slightly wider. And there's just more country.
Mm-hmm.
I think if we had been riding across Canada, like at the end of the ride, the one we took, our attitudes were really, we were really nervous and everybody was onto each other and mad at every move, so it might make a difference how much farther it is with how we feel.
Was this before you completed it, or just as you completed it, sort of relief to get it over?
Well, it was definitely a relief to get it over with, but it noticeably with my mom, she got really nervous and tired of driving in the traffic around Washington, D.C. and that.
Yes, it would be a great responsibility for her in particular.
Feeding all ours.
We're going to look at some more pictures here.
Well, I have one here of Ed and I at Bowers Beach, Delaware. This is where we finished off. I put the caption here on this one as Victory Celebrations. We were certainly very glad to arrive and rode our bikes down the boat ramp here. Perhaps you can see into the Atlantic Ocean, just to show we'd done it. And as Greg says, we were tired. We were ready to come home. What it was. We'd spent 5 weeks in very close quarters. We're still all good friends. It's not like we're all that mad at each other that we're all the time angry, but we were ready to come home. We did spend a couple of days doing some sightseeing after the trip ended. We spent 2 days in Washington, D.C. and did the full tourist bit. Saw all the sights and really loved it. Washington is a beautiful city.
Sounds great. Just to recap, how many days did it take again?
Took a total of 36 days, 31 and a half of which we actually rode. It was 3,003 miles.
So it would be an extensive undertaking, one that appears to have had good results. I get the impression you were all pleased that you had done it.
Absolutely.
And so if there was anyone sitting out there watching and they wanted to get more information, could they contact you?
Oh, certainly.
And they get you where?
Well, I can give you my home phone number if you like, or I think I'm fairly well known. I do work at the credit union. I have an office job, so I'm not an athlete by nature, but it was a great break for me, a change of pace to get out and do this.
Okay, you've heard Lorne say he's available through the credit union if you have more questions in this regard. Just before we go, you have a photo here of a person crashing right out on the street. Is this typical of a rest stop?
Well, for this particular individual, it was. It seemed that young Alistair could sleep almost anywhere, and here he's as you say, crashed out on the sidewalk in front of a convenience store. We would just stop there for a break to get a snack or a drink, and he was really asleep. We had to wake him before we left again. But he just had that ability that he could sleep anywhere. An amazingly good rider too, by the way. Aside from that great talent, he also could ride a bike very, very well. I have also one closing shot of the group of us, all 8, including Karen, on the beach in the Atlantic Ocean in Delaware.
Greg DeVries, Lorne Westnedge, it's been good having you with us. George Miller for Channel 10.